All right, Sergio, Demetrius Andrade entered the ring against Jason Quigley last Friday as an undefeated middleweight champion, but still lacked a signature performance. He got one against Quigley, stopping the Irishman by second round knockout. And immediately afterwards, the question turned to whether or not Demetrius Andrade will be able to lure one of the other top middleweights in the division into the ring with him. So I'll ask you this. Will Demetrius Andrade get a big fight in 2022?
Yes, I think it's time because we're seeing a different side of Boo Boo. First of all, we've seen a bad guy. We've seen a mean guy. He's wearing black. He got the knockout. He was slapping you around in the fighter meeting. He has a chip on his shoulder. I think he's gonna have to start doing that a little bit more to get the attention he wants and get the look and the fights that he wants. I don't think he gets Canelo next. Canelo's chasing history. He's going to cruiserweight. I don't think he gets Golovkin next because Golovkin's chasing Canelo. Charlo's the only one that makes sense. Me and you know that, but I don't think Charlo's going to look his way until he has one more big fight and one more big knockout just like he did. I think his next fight's going to be someone that's on the former champion level. And there's a lot of fighters that make sense. 3 fighters that are former champions fought in November. David Benavidez was one of them, undefeated, makes total sense. Anthony Durrell makes a lot of sense. And maybe even a Caleb Plant. These are the former champions that I think will put him in the position that if he beats them, then Charlo has no choice but to fight him. But until then, I think the former champion route is the best way to go.
Okay, but all 3 of those former champions that you mentioned are 168 pounders. So what you're saying is that there's nobody left at 160 for Demetrius Andrade to fight. Now, before I get into his future, I want to look back at the fight against Quigley. I don't want to over-dramatize a win over Jason Quigley. Good fighter, but clearly not on Demetrius Andrade's level. What Andrade did was not waste time with him, which is a different side of Demetrius Andrade, because too often we have seen him knock down the Luke Keelers, the Walter Kautendaklas, the Maciek Zuleskis, and then let them hang around until later in the fight or even go to a decision with a couple of the guys. Against Jason Quigley, he didn't waste any time. He knocked him down in the first round, and he got him out there in the second round. That's exactly what Demetrius Andrade needed to do. Now, I do have some optimism that in 2022, Andrade will get a big middleweight fight. I'm going to tell you why. Canelo seems like he's barreling towards a fight at cruiserweight. If he does, that opens up the division a little bit. All of a sudden, if Gennady Golovkin defeats Ryota Murata in December, he might want to look to unify. Who has a title? Demetrius Andrade. Jermall Charlo has been angling for that Canelo fight as well. With Canelo off the table, who is Charlo going to fight? Like, who on the PBC side of the street makes any sense? It will probably wind up being an opponent that Andrade already beat, someone like a Zaleski who could be available, or a Luis Arias who might be available. So while I'm not supremely confident that Andrade will get it, I'm more confident now than I have been at any point in the last year or so that Andrade will be able to lure one of those top guys into the ring.
The Golovkin one, my sources, and I do have sources, tell me that Golovkin will never look or fight an Andrade. And we heard it straight from Canelo's mouth at that press conference that Andrade crashed. I will never fight you, So he's going to have to get their attention. I think the best way to go is get another big knockout versus a name, a former champion, not a tier 1 name because they're the top of the line, but a tier 2 name like the names I just mentioned. Benavidez, Durrell, these make total sense. Caleb Plant, if he comes back, and wants to make a splash, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, he's gonna have to go through that route in order for him to get the tier 1 top dog fights.
Yeah, but Sergio, Benavidez, Durrell, and Caleb Plant, what do all 3 of them have in common besides being super middleweights? They're all on the PBC side of the street. So if Demetrius Andrade can't make a fight with Jermall Charlo at 160, what makes you think he's going to be able to make a fight with any of those guys at 168?
I don't. And if that's the case, then we're just talking about nothing. We're dreaming. We're just dreaming them. Then we better just wait for the next contender that they're going to put up against. I forget the guy's name. And he's #1 mandatory now. He has a hard name, European fighter. But he's the one that's up next. And if that's the case, that's just going to be Boo Boo Andrade's career. He's going to fight a lot of good fighters, but he's not going to fight the tier 1 fighters.
Hey, Demetrius Andrade thought said it best after the fight. I'm 31-0. I'm a former Olympian. What more do I have to do? Well, on Saturday, Terence Crawford picked up the most significant win of his welterweight career, stopping Shawn Porter in the 10th round of their WBO title fight. It was an impressive performance from Crawford, but it brought some criticism on Kenny Porter, the father and trainer of Shawn Porter, who hopped up on the ring apron and stopped the fight after the second knockdown of the 10th round. So, Sergio, I'll ask you this. Did Kenny Porter make a mistake in stopping that fight?
You said two things right there, Mannix. Kenny Porter, the father and the trainer. As the trainer, I'm going to say yes, he made a mistake, because you don't stop a fight, a competitive fight. It was a really good competitive fight going into the championship rounds. We know what Shawn Porter does in the championship rounds. He's ready for war. He's ready for battle. He goes out on his shield, and he's always in good, close fights. And this was the case here. Just because he gets dropped, you stop the fight? No, that's not the case there. But the father got involved there. The father, Kenny Porter, the father, he saw his son there. He knows that what was coming from Bud Crawford. So I just think the father, the blood, that got in the way there. And that's why I have an issue with father-trainer relationships. I know the Porters well. I've trained with them. I know how militant Kenny Porter can be. I know how much of a drill sergeant he can be. He yells at Shawn Porter the entire time they're sparring, they're training, but it works for them. That's what got them to where they are. But if you're going to be a drill sergeant, if you're going to be that militant, then you got to let him go to war. You got to let him get up and fight on like a champion in the championship rounds. And if it takes going out on your shield, then so be it, because that's what it takes to be a champion. That's what it takes to be a trainer of a champion.
Here's the thing, Sergio. This was a competitive fight going into the 10th round. Shawn Porter was not getting battered by Terence Crawford. A lot of people thought Shawn Porter was winning that fight. On the judges' scorecards, it was razor thin. And even though that round, the 10th, was likely to end as a 10-7 round, I think you've got to let your son finish that fight, finish out the last two rounds, and see if he can score a knockdown, if he can catch Terence Crawford. This is the last fight of his career, the biggest opportunity of his career. A main event against a pound-for-pound great, and you pull him out when he wasn't really hurt? I mean, Sergio, you saw the reaction of Shawn Porter after that second knockdown. He wasn't dazed or wobbly. He sat up almost immediately and pounded the canvas with his glove. That told me he had a lot more to give in that fight. So I tend to agree with you there. I think the father stopped the fight, not the trainer.
Shawn Porter was wearing an outfit that said war on it, channeling his Marvin Hagler. That wasn't war. That was a competitive battle between two top fighters, two of the best at welterweight. So when the going got tough for one of the champions, it was time for him to respond like a champion. And guess what? It was going to happen in the championship rounds. And if I had to put my money on it, Shawn Porter, we know what he does. He's an animal. He's a dog. He was going to take the fight to him. He was going to fight all the way to the end. He would have gone out of his shield, and everybody would have loved it, and everyone would have won. The sport of boxing would have won. But the only person that was feeling the pain here was the father. That's what was happening here, and that's why he decided to throw the towel in.
Look, I know Terence Crawford is a terrific finisher, and sure, there was a chance that he could have finished Porter off with something devastating before the end of that round. But the two knockdowns that Porter absorbed, I don't feel like they were knockdowns that really hurt him. One just kind of caught him and he fell on his backside. The second one, maybe it was a little bit worse. But again, he popped up and started punching the canvas. I thought Shawn Porter had something left in the tank. I would have liked to have seen him go out with another round, maybe two, before something like that happened with his corner.